He is the chosen one. You must see it.
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
Is it the chosen one?
He is.
And it is the Jedi who will stand in the way of peace.
It's not whether or not we fight.
It's how we choose to fight that matters.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
The Force will be with you, always.
I will not be the last Jedi.
Hello and welcome to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast. This is day 2 of what is going to be a year-long Star Wars marathon where we are watching all of the canon content, the films, the television shows, in chronological order. We're picking up from last week. We just watched Attack of the Clones, the second in the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy. My name is Yates.
My name's Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
I'm Keats. Hello.
And let's dive right into it, right? We're, fresh off of our minds. Jess, do you want to... We're going right into it. The love story.
The love story. It was so deep. I mean, oh, God. That was the greatest love story ever told. I feel like I really got to know who Padme and Anakin were. Just kidding. It was awful. And I think... across the Star Wars fan multiverse, that's one thing we can all agree on. It was really bad. So why does Padme love Anakin?
Yeah.
He kills Tusken Raiders.
Oof.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a big jump. I mean, the last we know those characters are their children, so that's a pretty intense leap right there. So we go from understanding those people as kids to seeing them as adults with very strange impulses that are sometimes hard to understand.
I guess they're like...
Are they adults though?
I think
not teenagers?
I think Anakin's supposed to be like 19, I'm pretty sure.
So, because they said it was 10 years since he saw Padme last.
Yeah.
So if he's 19, then that would mean that he was 9 in...
The Phantom Menace.
There you go. And he was he was like 3 years old. So I was kind of thinking that he was like 16. Mm-hmm. And the way he acts is like an immature 16-year-old.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, we were better than that at 16.
Yeah. I would think they established pretty clearly off the bat that in those 10 years, Anakin essentially has like some sort of fixation on Padme because it's
bizarre.
It is bizarre.
It's not healthy.
Mm-mm.
Every day for 10 years.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And dreamed of her.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this earlier. It's just, is that right that they don't let the Jedi have any romantic relations?
Are you allowed to love? Thought that was forbidden for a Jedi.
Attachment is forbidden. Possession is forbidden. Compassion, which I would define as unconditional love, is central to a Jedi's life. So you might say that we are encouraged to love.
I mean, I get why they do it. It's like no attachment, no blah, blah, blah. But obviously it really backfired in this important situation. Maybe someone should have checked in with this Messiah who's supposed to balance the Force, who has a dark, powerful dark side to him. Hey, are you okay? Because he's not okay. He's seriously grieving his mother, mm-hmm. who he replaced with Padme.
Yeah, so is there an Oedipal element to Anakin? Is
Clearly.
His fixation on Padme part of his fixation with his mother? Is there evidence for that? Is that projecting?
No, I mean, I think that, all of Star Wars is about, mothers and fathers, and, kind of what turns Anakin to the dark side is, he loses his mother, which he can't handle because he loses her twice. He replaces his mother with Padme, who he then loses. And then he never has a father. His father is Obi-Wan, who is, like, hard on him.
Yeah,
and he can't handle that either.
Yeah, definitely is, like, super confrontational in that sense. And Obi-Wan, like, really throughout the course of the movie, I mean, it's the movie, I think, from the beginning really wants you to connect Obi-Wan to being an Anakin father figure. They say it pretty explicitly, I think, with the first 20 minutes of the movie that Anakin considers Obi-Wan to be like a father. But Obi-Wan doesn't really know how to handle Anakin, at least in regards to his emotional attachment to Padme. Because, I mean, I think within the first, like, exchange of dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin says that he's been thinking about her all the time and he's really nervous, and Obi-Wan just sort of like chuckles to himself and like
he calls out that he's sweating.
Exactly, and like he's almost sort of like chiding him, and then later he reprimands him directly, and so Obi-Wan doesn't really know how to handle that and is not really giving him the support in that way.
It's just reprimand after reprimand, like, this isn't the Jedi way, you're going to get expelled from the Jedi Order. This isn't the Jedi way, you're going to get expelled from the Jedi Order.
It's like, Obi-Wan, please pull back. Like, it's just too much. Mm-hmm. But, like, once again, like, maybe if it wasn't this, like, weird priestly order. I mean, look at in how our real boring world it works when it's like, oh, you guys are so much better than normal human beings. Like, you're held to a higher standard. You can't, like, have relations with other humans, like, here's your outlet, like, you know, it doesn't work.
Even like in real life, when it's like you've reached that age where you begin to become attracted to somebody else, where your parents or whatever your higher figure takes you aside and says like, oh, okay, you've reached this stage in your life, here, let me try and guide you through it a bit. That should at least be part of the Jedi training if they're being taken from the age of 1 or whatever.
Right.
There should be like some kind of organized, not program, I don't know what you would call it, but like some kind of lesson to be taught in what the benefits are for steering clear of relations and staying neutral.
Yeah.
Sex ed.
Yeah.
Sex ed for Jedis.
They don't really go, and they don't really go into much about the consequences of the code either. They just sort of drop the code like there's a code and that's it. But Anakin even has sort of like his own justification.
Do you think any of the Jedis know the code actually?
Only Mace Windu. They just use the bookworm. He's got like a tiny pocket code.
Yeah,
like
with glasses. He puts on little reading glasses
and reads the mini code.
Didn't we all establish that, you know, their whole thing is like we establish peace and order in this galaxy filled of like people who are suffering and poverty, like, and injustice. So like they're basically the cops of the universe. Like, as much I love the Jedi, I like no hate, I really do, but like you have to criticize what you love to hold it to a higher standard. Ahem. New trilogy. But I mean, Padme did mention that she has loved before when she was young, mm-hmm. and I think that... do you think she's taking the relationship as serious as Anakin is?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
She's kind of just like, whatever about it, until like they're about to die. And she's like, oh, hey, I love you. Well, it's possible that... One of the things that she said about her previous boyfriend was just that he was kind of put in a dilemma where he was either going to pursue art or stay with Padme, and he chose art. So maybe she's kind of on the defensive because she thinks no one's ever going to take her seriously, and then Anakin comes along and is the most serious person she's ever faced. So she's like, maybe I won't find anybody as devoted to me as him.
She has like a weird cloistered life. She also has like a weird cloistered life.
Yeah, it's like being a child queen is like, what? Like, psychologically, like, imagine being like 13 years old and having that type of responsibility. Like,
how could this possibly go wrong? But yeah, I mean, I feel like this whole love story just makes Anakin like very, very hateable. Mm. It's like he's just not like.
And the question I was asking all of you before was, do you think that was intentional in the writing process? Do you think we're all supposed to hate Anakin in this movie?
Yes. I do.
I don't know. I feel like really conflicted about it because he is our main character.
I think.
But what movie is like good if you're supposed to hate the main character?
I think it's just trying to show us his road to becoming Vader. That's all it really is. It's just like the stepping stones.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's definitely good Kenobi's in the movie because he's like the characters. We're seeing the trilogy through his eyes pretty much. I've always thought of the prequel trilogy as like Kenobi's trilogy, honestly.
Anakin is like an anti-hero. So I feel like it's more just like the downfall of like a potentially like good person.
Yeah, so I mean, to go into that, like Obi-Wan doesn't really, as far as like an emotional arc, doesn't have too much in this movie. It's more sort of like Kenobi's journey is more like an intellectual one, and Anakin's is definitely an emotional one, and you know it does do the job at least of Anakin's sort of trials that he faces in the movie are at least easily understandable coming from where he's coming from. Like, it attaches it to, he loses his mother in the movie, and just the idea that he's sort of in a transition period in his life. But through the characterization of Anakin, what ends up happening is that Anakin comes off as, really moody and really occasionally very aggressive, and...
Like red flag after red flag.
Red flag after red flag, culminating him in essentially committing genocide, like with zero oversight, against a group of indigenous people who, to be fair, they God knows what they did to Shmi. I mean, it's just like they're left very vague, but it's like what was going on?
I also
they
love
sucked her blood. It's like a thing.
It is?
Yeah.
Wait, I have no idea.
Yeah, like in like the visual dictionary. We talked about this in the first episode.
We did.
Yeah, like
okay.
Yeah,
so coming back. So in the visual dictionary, they talk about Tusken Raider.
Yeah, and like those like things on their mouth. It's like bloodsuckers or something like that. That's why like when I see that scene, it always hits me really hard because I remember reading that about the Tusken Raiders when I was a kid, and I was like, these guys are fucking freaky. Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. But so basically she's like their like blood bag that they keep around just
probably
to
feed. That's what I always think. Like,
and
they're
I
just using her
assume
for
some
blood
of them
or
are
something.
good people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean they're just trying to live their lives. I mean that they've already been sort of like ostracized from the community. Clearly. I mean they're just living out there. I mean I think if they're like Tusken Raiders, if you challenge the sentience of like the Tusken Raiders, then like that makes what Anakin is doing okay. And I think the movie clearly wants you to recognize, even though what happened to Shmi is horrible, that Anakin is clearly like there's no difference between that person and Darth Vader that runs down a hallway mauling down rebel soldiers or even innocent civilians.
But even like Darth Vader's got some like maturity of mind about him. Mm-hmm. And I guess the whole Anakin story is like, yes, he's like immature and doing the wrong thing, but also like his story is in tandem with like his downfall is in tandem with like the downfall of the Jedi Order.
Yeah. Because
there should have been some checks and balances and like some people kind of like being like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, what's like let's address where this is going. Instead, it's just all this like grab bag of chaos.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think is important in that Anakin-Padme relationship is not just the one-sidedness of it, because I think everyone here, definitely thought that Anakin takes the relationship more seriously than Padme does, at least in this movie. And in the very short amount of time that we know, they're together for a very short amount of time, and then they end up getting married at the end, which is pretty intense.
It's insane.
It's like a Las Vegas.
Another statistic.
A Las Vegas wedding, essentially, in the Star Wars universe.
What happens on Naboo? The end of that.
But Anakin, I think, and I do feel strongly about this being the case in Revenge of the Sith too, is that Anakin is very specific in his language, and really that first scene where they're like, not the first scene, but it's like the scene where Anakin really like proposes like that they have a romantic relationship directly by the fireside chat. It's
God.
Yeah, it's hard to sit through. But
it's literally like cheesy poetry. It's not even like it doesn't even feel like real dialogue.
It's so cliche.
But
it's so cliche it hurts.
But it's all very targeted. Like it is Anakin putting everything on Padme. It's like, this is what you're doing to me. Like, you're creating like a scar on. You're scarring me.
He doesn't want the kiss.
Yeah,
that should never have happened.
Yeah, he says that, you know, like Padme essentially initiated a kiss. So I definitely feel like, you know,
what? He was the one who was rubbing her back. What are you talking about? And then leaned in.
Yeah, it's like, you shouldn't have given me that kiss. I mean, he says that directly. So he's putting all the ball in her court.
You shouldn't have asked for it, Padme.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
the whole thing
it's
is
pretty.
terrible.
You were showing your whole back. You were asking.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I would call that like emotionally abusive, basically. I mean, he's putting all that on her, and then he deflects at the end and says, "Oh, whatever you want to do, of course." Like, even though, like, you're, you know, I'm like, supposedly we have an emotional connection, and I'm putting all this emotional burden on you to make a decision.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it's kind of like both though, because he's also like saying like, "I will do whatever you want." So he's trying to like emotionally like abuse her to like.
But then he flips it, and then he gives her the option. But it's like, you know, like, you're placing all this emotional burden on me. Oh, but, you know, obviously I'll do whatever you want to do.
I can be totally whipped. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's basically like the popular kids in high school like have their first relationship ever, and it ends up being like totally emotionally stupid and abusive. I mean, but then also like they have tons of power. Like in the universe.
He's literally the chosen one. He's the most popular person in the high school.
But also, like, that's a good thing to bring up, because, like, they're all talking about, like, oh, he's the chosen one. Like, how is he so great? Where do we see him, like, exhibiting behavior that shows that he's the chosen one?
Yeah, we don't get to see too much of it in this. I will say he's just sort of, most of it's on the emotional stuff with Padme. I mean...
Well, he like mentions it, and he says like he surpassed like Obi-Wan.
But that's just like him saying that, and he's kind of just a dick. Like, I feel like that sounds more like, when I hear that, I'm not like, oh wow, you're right. I'm more just like, dude, like, your relationship with Obi-Wan really needs some intervention.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing is at the end he does go, like, toe-to-toe with Count Dooku, a Sith Lord. Like, that's like, one element of it.
And gets his butt handed to him.
And gets his butt handed to him, yeah, that's true. But, I mean, so does Obi-Wan. Yeah, he does get it twice. That's true.
I hate the way, though, that they get their butt handed to them is like, Scar, I'm done. It's just like, seriously? You know, and then in other times it's like, they can have their arm chopped off and still fight.
Right. Jordan, you want to go into the other elements of the story, which is the Obi-Wan thread?
Yeah.
The story definitely sets up intrigue more than and mystery more than the Phantom Menace does. It's like
yeah, it's like the title of the Phantom Menace is like all about mystery and intrigue, and this is like so much more, and it's like a war. It's like a movie about a upcoming war.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the Detective Obi-Wan story is the stuff I like the most out of the whole movie. It's definitely the strongest element for me, at least. I don't know about anyone else.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan is a lot different than even his characterization in Phantom Menace. I mean, I think I joked last time, he's like, and in really Phantom Menace, he beats Darth Maul, and that's pretty much it. Obi-Wan's just sort of like a cardboard cutout that says jokes. And then in this movie, he's sort of more in the Qui-Gon role. He's the master now. And I would say he does, you know, we were criticizing Qui-Gon a lot of, like, being sort of abusive of his powers and doing sort of whatever he wants.
It's like a little slime ball.
A little slime ball that's lovable because he's got that beard, but
he looks cool.
And a green lightsaber. But Obi-Wan is sort of more, I think, immediately it's easier to see where he's coming from and appreciate
He's just a tough dad.
Yeah, he's just a tough dad.
Tough on his son.
That's his biggest gripe, is just he's a tough dad.
He doesn't like drugs.
You want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks.
You want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
Yeah, he doesn't like drugs.
Makes the guy go home and rethinks his life.
That was a Qui-Gon move. That was a total Qui-Gon move.
Yeah. 100%. Was Qui-Gon straight edge?
I assume all the Jedi are straight edge. Like that would be weird if like they're not allowed to have sex, but they're allowed to do drugs. Like,
yeah.
Or I
Yvonne
guess
Peele sneaking in a blunt every now and then. Right, Jessica?
Yeah. Those midichlorians are like spice. No, we're really mixing metaphors.
So Obi-Wan, there is the impetus of the mystery, which is that someone's out to assassinate
Senator
Amidala. Jessica, did you call it like in your brain like who it was, or
wait, for what?
Who was like behind the assassination? I guess that it was the Viceroy from the first movie.
Oh no, I didn't.
Your favorite character?
I didn't actually call that it was the Viceroy. I mean,
because he wasn't in the movie until he said, I was the one who tried to kill Senator Amidala, so of course you didn't predict it.
No, I feel like also I was so wrapped up in like the progression and unfolding of the mystery. Like I loved how uncovering the mystery of like who is trying to assassinate Senator Amidala. They uncovered like this whole plot.
Yeah. It just like keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's a clone army now. What's that? I'm supposed to be here to pick it up, and this dead Jedi is what? He's doing dead what? What's going on?
So what was that about? That it was like in the dead Jedi's name? Is that just something that like Count Dooku did to like cover his tracks or something? Or no? I don't get that.
No, I think you're onto it, and in fact, I will go say so far as to say that it does get addressed again in the future, and that there is some sort of closure on that. But I remember being a kid walking out of Attack of the Clones, and I probably asked my mom like 20 times, like, Mom, who is Master Sifo-Dyas? And just, I don't know, son. Like, Mom, who is Master Sifo-Dyas, and why did he create the clone army?
Well, they revealed who created it. It was Count Dooku, because Jango Fett says he was recruited by a man named Tyrannus, and then at the end, Darth Sidious calls Count Dooku Darth Tyrannus.
Yeah. For all we know, Master Sifo-Dyas is just not even a name, not even a person.
No, he's a person.
Well, I mean, they say they know who he is. So.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. And interesting watching this again when Obi-Wan asks Yoda and Mace Windu, did the Council order the creation of a clone army? Yoda and Mace Windu do like look at each other with sort of like a knowing like expression, but I mean I'm just interpreting that. But the way they look at each other, it's like, oh, Sifo-Dyas. Like there's something, like there's just something there. They know a little more than they're leading on. I don't think necessarily that the Council approved the clone army, but just like the look that they give each other, there is a story there. We just don't really get to see it.
There's a lot of like. It's funny how they're like, we have to keep a closer eye on the Senate. It's like, maybe you have to keep a closer eye on the Jedi Council.
On you guys' funding.
True, that too.
I love the follow-up scene where it's just, do you guys know anything about this clone army that we have? If we can't see this clone army, we're done for.
Yeah, definitely I think there's a bit more unfolding of, like we said before, Obi-Wan's a bit more likable than Qui-Gon. I think there's a bit more of unfolding of the hubris of the Jedi characters. I mean, Yoda and Mace Windu seem a little bit more humble in regards to admitting, like, oh, this is, things are unfolding now that we're not sure if we can stop, and it might be our fault.
Yeah, the portrayal of those characters was super legit.
Yeah,
I loved their interactions.
Yeah, Mace Windu specifically, like in The Phantom Menace, he's supposed to like be like this super skeptic on mainly just the Chosen One, but here he's actually fleshed out as more of like an open-minded Jedi as to what needs to be done, even on the battlefield, which is not the Jedi's natural spot.
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
Exactly. And Qui-Gon said the same thing in The Phantom Menace. It's just so weird that like they thought that was a good idea to go in Geonosis and have like basically their last stand of, being in essentially a war zone when their whole ideal ship was to...
Right, they become soldiers.
They become soldiers and basically just forfeit their beliefs.
Yeah, that seemed like a little bit out there of like, you're going to put all of...
I mean, I get they're like defending, basically. They're kind of just defending the people who are being executed, Kenobi, Anakin, and Padme. But still, it's like, get them out of there. Don't like hang around and kill everyone.
Yeah, they have these morals, but they just like ignore them. Like, I remember like... they said to Obi-Wan when he's investigating, like, oh, find who's trying to assassinate the senator and bring her to us so we can question him. And then Mace Windu just chops off his head. What?
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
I thought you were supposed to be peaceful people.
I think definitely. Well, are the Jedi autonomous? To me, I think the evidence points towards the Jedi defer to the Senate, and in Revenge of the Sith too. And I'm not sure how much it plays into Clone Wars, but in Revenge of the Sith, there's definitely the idea that the Jedi are directly loyal to the Senate and not they don't necessarily follow their own instruction. I mean, the Jedi Council is autonomous, but in general, they defer to what the Senate wishes, and if the Senate votes that Palpatine has the power to declare war, and Palpatine declares war, then they're, at least by their own estimation, and by their own beliefs around how the Council works, that they defer.
But do they ever openly say that in Attack of the Clones?
No, they don't. I
feel like they're a part of the system, they're a part of the whole order of things, but maybe they're also a check on things.
Mm-hmm.
They're one of the branches of the defense forces or something.
Yeah, I mean, as one important thing that they established in this movie, and I forget if they established it in Phantom Menace as well, but they alluded in Phantom Menace to essentially that there hasn't been a war in a very long time. And in this movie, they say, well, if there hasn't been a war, there hasn't been an army. So just the whole, in fact, the creation of an army is abnormal.
I'm pretty sure in Phantom Menace they don't say that there hasn't been a war in a long time, but they kind of refer to the Mandalorian Wars as the most recent of the wars, but they also imply it to be a very long time ago. So
yeah, it was a long. Whatever. There was some conflict, and then now the Republic has been at peace for 1,000 years.
But also, there's a lot of violence on the Outer Rim, but they don't talk about what the violence is as you go closer into the center of power.
Yeah, definitely to me, and I wish I had talked about this more in the last one, but it feels like poverty and criminality are the most defining aspects of what happens in the Outer Rim. In the core worlds, it's sleek, and you do see elements of it creep in, the crime, the bounty hunters, the idea that there's an assassination attempt, and they're guessing who's responsible, and the answer is that the villains retreat to the urban area below the mean streets of the city. And you see it in Boba Fett too, just the idea that there's a literal child running around, literally shoots Obi-Wan with a ship attempting to kill him.
Yeah.
And with Anakin, essentially street racing, I think that's an important pressure on the characters, and part of the world is just that out there, there's this no man's land where you have to fight to survive, and that's where Anakin comes from, and maybe Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon especially is super, knows how to use that to his advantage, knows how to use that to con Watto to get Anakin out of slavery. And things
I didn't say this in the Phantom Menace episode, but one of the lines I took and wrote down in my notes was when they're all eating lunch together or whatever they're doing in Anakin's home, and Anakin says, "No one can kill a Jedi." And then Qui-Gon's like, "I wish that were true." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Yeah, he knows, dude. He knows. He knows what's going down with the Jedi."
Yeah, and the Count Dooku refers to that too, just Qui-Gon sort of also was afraid of the Senate too, knew that it was corrupt, and I mean they say it explicitly the first time you go to the Senate, just Palpatine's oh, the Senate is corrupt.
Yeah, I was he just basically tells him the big secret of the entire prequel trilogy, and he's just, I don't believe you.
Oh yeah, between Count Dooku and Obi-Wan. Yeah.
How could that be true? But then, at the same time, he's like, "Hey, all politicians are corrupt, Anakin."
Yeah, and
but maybe there's levels of corruption and disbelief about but how corrupt is it?
And that's probably the biggest test that Obi-Wan faces in this movie is that, he's uncovering all these secrets, and he gets he gets exactly what he wants. I mean, he gets a one-on-one with the person behind at least most of the conspiracy. Obviously, Sidious is floating above Count Dooku in terms of how knowledgeable and being the mastermind behind all of it. But he gets one-on-one time with Count Dooku, and Count Dooku tells him everything. And Obi-Wan, instead of being open about it, rejects it. And he said, "This is my truth is the Republic. My truth is democracy. My truth is the Jedi." And Count Dooku offers him the truth that we know as the audience, that things are going to go south real soon, and that the truths that you hold are going to fail.
Which really puts what Palpatine says in like a different light, how he's like, I love democracy. Well, like, he does love democracy because it's like easy for him to manipulate it.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, he loves democracy. It's his stage.
Because it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
But, okay, just backtracking a little bit to the mystery, like, here's something I don't really understand about it, which is Count Dooku sets up the clones, but the clones help the Republic. Mm-hmm. And then also, Jango Fett is like what the clones start from, but Jango Fett is working for the
Separatists.
The Separatists. So it's like, what's what there?
They should put 2 and 2 together, but they don't.
But Mace Windu chops his head off. So
that's very true.
Yeah, I mean the Jedi are duped. I mean, I would.
But I guess, like, then how did the clones screw the Jedi over, like the Republic over in the end? I guess that's the next movie.
Yeah, it's the next movie.
Okay, so it's like their plan all along.
Yeah. They say it in the end of the movie. They're like, everything's going according to plan when he mentions the clone army. So
presumably, and I think there's lots of different reasons. But the thing that I guess the movie states most directly is that the idea of the war benefits Palpatine. Benefits Palpatine somehow. And I would say definitely the fact that there is an army, just that the creation of an army is what's in dispute at the start of the movie, and that at the end of the movie there is an army. That's what Palpatine wants.
Palpatine isn't in this movie a lot. I noticed that.
No.
He's in it for 4 scenes.
Jar Jar isn't in it a lot either, but he has one of the most important moments in Star Wars history.
Which is?
Giving the Chancellor emergency powers so he can create the clone army.
I thought you were going to say his line.
Oh.
Jordan,
you want?
What was it again?
It was, Senators! Delegate Felligans!
Dello Felligans.
No, Dello Felligans.
Dello Felligans.
Dello Felligans.
Which sounds like a Jedi name. I'm
Master
Dello.
Master Dello Felligans died almost 10 years ago. I'm so sorry.
I loved how much Obi-Wan we got in this movie, and we were talking about this earlier, but I think that Obi-Wan in the this trilogy is what Han Solo is to the
prequel trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he is just such a great kind of person for the viewers to
feel all immersed in.
Immersed, and he just acts the role so well. I think Obi-Wan is such a well fleshed out character, and I love watching him.
Yeah, this is definitely the Kenobi movie, the most Kenobi movie of the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
Qui-Gon's obviously Phantom Menace, and then I would say Revenge of the Sith is pretty focused a lot more on Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody kind of has each movie kind of has a defined protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's different.
I guess you also see the progression
refreshing.
of the Jedi.
Yeah,
as
that
well
too.
through all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just the generational thing of quite being a master to apprentice.
Yeah, the characterization of I think all the protagonists changes a lot from. At least from the prequel trilogy, each film to film. Clone Wars, there's a bit more consistency between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. I think within the continuum of those movies, you'll get a consistent character development. But, jump from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, I think Obi-Wan's characterization is a lot different. Padme is a little different too. And then jumping to Revenge of the Sith, definitely Anakin has sort of different stuff going on, and so does Obi-Wan.
I also think like the Anakin that we see in the Clone Wars TV show is such a better Anakin than in this episode.
He's definitely more likable. Yeah,
he's just like a real character.
I feel like in the Clone Wars, he definitely has like a lot less demons he's trying to overcome. That's probably why he's so likable, is because he has a lot more worked out for himself.
It's so much easier to
He's just
people
enjoying
like
the war.
Right.
Obi-Wan's still Obi-Wan, though. Gotta love him.
Yeah, Obi-Wan's still, like, condescending Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that'll be valuable, because in Attack of the Clones, I mean, we do get a good bit of Anakin and Obi-Wan at the beginning, but then they split up. And the Clone Wars will get more of the opportunity, and for me, watching it through all the way through, just to see that relationship really change, and see their characterization just be a bit more fleshed out. Because here they're like, it's a clear pupil-student dynamic, and it's definitely tense. And it's definitely a lot different even by next week when I'm imagining, it's been a while since I've seen it, but even by next week, the Clone Wars movie it will be different.
Clone Wars, really opens the world up for Star Wars. Speaking of world building, here's Keats on the world building segment. Thanks, Yates.
Just you say that.
So yeah, I was falling asleep during a lot of this movie, to be honest. But if there's one thing that kept me like hooked on it, was definitely the visual aspect. The Phantom Menace introduced us to a lot of cool new concepts of like the Coruscant cityscape, Naboo being like a paradise, as I think you said on the last episode.
Yep.
But this definitely like takes that.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's only Boba Fett line.
Attack of the Clones definitely takes that concept, but kind of expands on it. Like you get to see all different kinds of levels of Coruscant in the opening chase.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Oh boy, is it the best chase scene in all of Star Wars?
I really like the Coruscant chase.
The Coruscant chase had me on the edge of my seat. Like, that was, like, high action.
You got high action and you got Anakin and Kenobi, like, dynamic going on at the same time.
Yeah. That's where they're the most likable together, is when the two of them are together.
Yes, and you see that in the show all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like and it's also just so Jedi. This is like the Jedi at their best. Just like all fighting, no feelings. When they get to the feelings, they're screwed. When they are at the fighting part, that's what they're for, I guess.
Let's just pretend we have no feelings.
Right.
I love the way their cars look. The car designs are awesome, and
the traffic scenes.
Yeah, just the notion that there's always traffic going on is really cool.
So cool. They ripped off Blade Runner.
Yeah, but it's fine.
But they made it shinier.
Yeah, they made it shinier.
They made it look less dystopian.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a little bit more morally acceptable for the Jedi to go there. It's still.
But it still kind of is like gritty. The universe. Yeah, like the universe kind of like sucks. Like kind of what Jango Fett says is like, I'm just trying to make my way in the universe. It's like, yeah, dude, we can all relate.
We also get to see Palpatine's office. I don't think we get to see that in the Phantom Menace.
No, well, because he doesn't have his own executive suite. So.
Exactly. That's a beautiful set right there on Coruscant. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. What other Coruscant?
That's the main... Oh, we get more of the Jedi Temple, which we really only got the council meeting room in Phantom Menace.
By today's standards, it doesn't look that good, but just seeing really tall, high ceilings with the pillars is very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely better than in Phantom Menace, where I felt was very noticeably cheesy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we got to see some younglings being trained. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's
just because it's Yoda kind of letting his guard down for a bit.
Mm-hmm. How embarrassing!
It's the Yoda we know. I think from Empire Strikes Back. I think there's just that Yoda can be
goofy Yoda.
Yoda can chill out.
Yoda's not a general right now.
Yeah, Yoda. I mean, in the context of the prequels, Yoda's normally dealing with like a lot of responsibilities, and we can see that he still can. Exactly.
Did they ever screw up Yoda in Star Wars?
I think his whole characterization throughout the prequels and the journey his character goes on is really strong.
Oh, we get the Jedi Archives. The
Jedi
Archives.
Yes.
Joe Costa knew.
Joe Costa knew, the librarian.
Yeah.
And I loved
Throw on
how
that
she
sound
was
bite of
just
Joe
like...
Costa knew.
If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
And I loved how she was just like, well, if it's not here, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, like you're
Bye.
Yeah. Then I thought it was great, and that was an example of sort of the things we were critical of in Phantom Menace. The hubris of the Jedi, and then Yoda, and Obi-Wan are able to cut right through it and move past that, and with the help of once again in the last movie, the kids were the smartest people in the movie. And here, like, the kid's the one that says, "Oh, someone erased that from the archives." Presumably, Count Dooku or Master Sifo-Dyas.
Right.
The scene we're missing from Attack of the Clones is the one where Obi-Wan goes back to, like, rub it in Joe Costa's face. Like, you were absolutely wrong. My friend Mace Windu here, he can give you the exact coordinates.
He took like a selfie with Lama Su.
Yeah, he
the Prime Minister.
He went right back. He's like, Joe Costa, come to. We're gonna go somewhere. I'm not gonna tell you where. He just drives to the Camino.
But also, there's some legit storytelling where the statue of Count Dooku was right behind him as he was like, I wonder where this world is.
But then we go to Geonosis, and it's like the ugliest planet in the world.
I love seeing
in
the industry,
universe.
like how industry works in the Star Wars universe, and like who builds all the stuff that like makes the universe run.
I love like knowing about it, but like I don't know. I don't have to like. I don't want to sit there for 20 minutes looking at it.
They had that whole like that scene where they're in the droid factory.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, did it remind anyone else of Frogger? It totally reminded me of Frogger when they were in the droid factory and they just had to like jump over things.
I hate that.
I hate that
sequence.
scene. I
So
hate that scene.
bad.
But I did like how he like had his hand all whatever,
Yeah, I didn't think about
trapped.
that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jessica, you mentioned it was like foreshadowing. I had never
Yeah,
thought of that before.
I thought there was some cool like story. Like there was a lot of foreshadowing and like thematic elements that I mean.
I think it was overall important to the story. I think like the factory, like I do think that the ending action sequence, which is basically droids versus clones and a few Jedi around in the area, but like all out assault between the droids and the clones. Yes, it's hard to build an emotional connection with that because we don't see the clones. In the Clone Wars, they do a better job of fleshing the clones out and, caring for them directly as people and treating them as people. But the way the movie treats them here, they're a bit more... Like, definitely I was thinking of the scene where you see them all in Camino, like, at...
That's the world I forgot about. Camino.
Yeah, Camino I think looks awesome, but the just like when they're in the hallway looking out at just the embryos just floating around, I'm just thinking like the ultimate sort of dehumanization through industry. Like there's literally little people like circulating down in a factory setting.
Are they people though?
Well, we get enough of it. We know that there's like an element of that their genes have been directly tampered with by the Kaminoans, but you don't really feel that connection, especially at that fight at the end. But I like the idea that the clones and the droids, I like the idea that it's meaningless, like that it's just like the idea that Palpatine created this war, and then it's just, one side of like automatons versus another side of automatons, and it's brutal and it's totally pointless and meaningless.
Well, but they start to introduce the theme of droid rights and like I don't know.
They do?
Well,
there's
a little like blips here and there where I'm like, oh yeah, like now we're starting to get into like clones, droids, robots, like all those types of things.
Hard sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, hard and like sci-fi themes where it's like, what do we do with these like things that we don't know if they're human or not? And I think that they touch on that a lot in Solo, but that's like something that's throughout Star Wars, and they do a really good job. And sorry to keep referencing the show, but I think that's something I really like in the Clone Wars show, is that like the clones are humanized. Yeah.
So Camino, really interesting planet, high oceans, high intellect intellectual aliens.
Yeah, and that they look kind of, like the Greys, like classic aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
I feel like we've seen those aliens in so many other sci-fi things.
Yeah.
Which kind of, to me, felt a little bit like of a ripoff. I was like, why is everything so clean? Like, this isn't the Star Wars I know and love.
Yeah.
Like, we should be in, like, a gritty bar now.
That's one of the things I liked about it, was because they mentioned it's beyond the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
And I never really heard anywhere else described as beyond the Outer Rim before. So this is, like, completely uncharted territory for...
It definitely feels like out of place and kind of dreamlike. I mean, it's also like the special effects. I think it makes it look that way. But just the idea of like Obi-Wan wandering these pure white halls, it's almost like 2001. You know, like it's like he's out.
I want to see more of it in future films because it's very breaking new ground.
Yeah, it's. I think. I think we'll see a good amount of it in Clone Wars, which I'm excited to. I mean, immediately when I saw Camino, I'm like, oh man, I get to see a little more of this, which will be cool.
Well, I just mean like in the future prospect for Disney films.
Right.
Yeah. Obi-Wan has just developed so much from Phantom Menace. Like, I mean, this mission that he was on is, like, really hard. Like, he was doing all of that alone and, like, basically uncovering, like, the most important thread that will, like, affect the galaxy for the next, like, few hundred years.
Yeah.
And, like, he handled it like a boss. And, like, in Phantom Menace, it was just like, oh, goodness, this guy is not ready. Like, that's kind of... He was just, like, petulant in Phantom Menace. And then in this one, he's, like, petulant, but also, like, really cool.
Before I finish, I just wanted to backtrack to Coruscant, because I forgot about one of the most iconic locations in all of Star Wars now, which is just Dexter's Diner. Everyone wants to go to Dexter's Diner.
I hope we get Dexter's Diner at Disney's Star Wars
Land. Oh my god, dude!
Will.
Imagine like the waitress like serving you.
Want a cup of Java juice?
That would be so cool. But yeah, I mean,
that's one of those things. I think it's what fans choose to pick fights over is always confusing to me. But like Dexter's Diner, it's sort of strangely contentious.
It's a happy place.
Wait, explain.
That's it. There's nothing to explain. I don't understand it. Like
it's like people hate Dexter's Diner.
Yeah.
What? I guess it's corny, I guess.
Yeah, I guess like people don't like the idea of a diner being in Star Wars, but like where are they gonna eat? Like they can make robots that talk. Like they need somewhere.
They eat portions. God,
yeah, like it's gotta be a little sexier than that. Like there's gotta be places to eat that are like real restaurants.
We need more restaurants in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Point blank.
I heard.
I love the look of the nightclub. Like just the idea of a nightclub, like them
and
walking
football.
in.
They have football.
They have football.
I hate that. Star Wars doesn't have football. Is that a bathroom? Star Wars doesn't have bathrooms. They don't have to.
Are those salt shakers? Star Wars doesn't have salt shakers.
Wait, is that a pear? Star Wars doesn't have pears.
Oh my god, when he cut her pear, I wanted to die.
Yeah, why did he use a knife?
I wanted to die.
Okay, I think we're getting a little bit too close to like reviewing territory as opposed to analysis territory.
Phantom Menace like lays a lot of groundwork of just like, this is a new trilogy, but it's kind of like, okay, what are you doing? But this one, it's very much like, okay, I understand this is taking us in a direction. And I feel like it does that very well. And like, for like a middle movie, it does a really good job of like pushing us to finish the story.
And I think the ending is like, leaves a pretty strong impact, and also in terms of wanting a new movie afterwards, and also like it's a really nice final statement to go into Clone Wars too. Like I was like, it felt like the pilot episode. It ends with the war starting, and then it goes into the war.
It ends with somebody saying, "This is just the beginning."
Yeah, but like just the idea that we can immediately recognize the Empire in that sweeping shot of the clone army, which I think is awesome.
But it's the Republic.
That
Which
we're
is so
supposed to care about.
interesting.
I think so too.
I think that's like a really cool twist that like the stormtroopers are originally the Republic's thing.
Right. Yeah, I think it's it's true to life too. Like any fascist, like Hitler, or they're voted and they're given all those things freely, and then it's their decision to keep them and abuse those powers.
But the evil characters in Star Wars are so fucking evil. Aren't they? They're so... I just hate them all.
Yeah, watching this, I like really hated Palpatine. Like, even though we didn't see him that much, he's just such a manipulative person. I was like, I hate him. I was like, just the way, like, that scene where he was just like, where the blue guy was just like, if only Senator Amidala was here, and then
cut to Jar Jar.
And then cut to Jar Jar, and then you just like how Palpatine like manipulated that whole conversation to where it would lead to that being said, and then Jar Jar being the idiot, be like, maybe Misa should think and do this.
Maybe I should think, said Jar Jar. So we're gonna be closing the show now. We would like to go out and go eat some Indian food, but before we do that, we would like to start a new tradition where we take a quote from the movie or episode of the show, present it, and just, give a quick analysis on it. This week's quote from Attack of the Clones is going to be Obi-Wan from minute 7:51 seconds, where he says, "This weapon is your life."
She went into the club, Master.
Patience. Use the Force. Think.
Sorry, Master.
You went in there to hide, not to run.
Yes, Master.
Next time, try not to lose it.
Yes, Master.
This weapon is your life.
Yates, what do you think that quote is all about?
Well, I mean, that's when Obi-Wan is being like very didactic towards Anakin. And in fact, actually, watching it, I was like, this might be the scene where he does the most like Alec Guinness of
yeah.
Like I noticed that directly. He really went into the
He's talked about it before, like on shows and stuff, where he can channel a lot more Guinness than he chooses to in the movies.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
That's true. I don't really see, like, the connection between the two of them. Like,
between
Ewan McGregor
It's
and
very
Alec
subtle.
Guinness.
It's easier to see in Sith, where he has, like, the haircut and everything. He has the full beard and everything. But, so it felt like a teaching moment, but, I mean, obviously it raises questions, why is the weapon, like, the whole life of a Jedi? And, it's kind of this contradiction that we're going to see play out, that, the Jedi have to learn throughout the course of the movie, is that, you can't just talk about diplomacy, you have to live it. And the Jedi are not living it. They're trying. Some of them are really trying, like Obi-Wan and Yoda, I think, are having a difficult time navigating this tough moral landscape. But just the idea that the weapon is their whole life, seems to be a big red flag there for what is the philosophy of the Jedi really. And we'll hopefully see that play out and have some answers by the end.
Good. Jordan?
This weapon's your life. We can't have any possessions. Let's go eat Indian food.
Thank you. That was the answer I was really hoping for. Jessica?
Deep. Yeah, I mean, the Jedi are like the classic, like, spiritual warrior class, and it really, like, plays out like spiritual warrior, like, can that be a thing? And I don't know, I mean, they talk a lot about we have to, like, we're gonna be able to balance the Force and everything like that, but does being spiritual warriors and living by the sword, like dying by the sword type of thing, like, is that in itself destabilizing of the Force? Like, he doesn't say, like, we live by our mind, or, that's, like, your most important life force, or, our hearts, or anything else. It's this piece of metal. So, I mean, I think that kind of shows some of the inherent corruption within the Jedi class, and it's, like, it's kind of sad, but it also is like that's where the galaxy is in this point of time. Like, it's a hard life in the galaxy, like, and the Jedi are a reflection of that. They're like a high ideal, but they're also like, I don't know, I feel like there's a higher ideal that could be reached.
Yeah, you would think, like, their life should be like the Force, and like listening to the Force and just letting it flow through them, because everything, as Qui-Gon says, is the will of the Force.
Right, and I think that in the end of the movie they show how powerful Count Dooku and how powerful Yoda is, because they don't need a lightsaber, like they can just hurl like rocks and stuff at each other. So like if you can do that, you can defend yourself without a lightsaber. So I think that, you know, ideally they would just be super, like, the highest class of spiritual people in the universe would be people who are just Force sensitive. They don't use a weapon. And I wonder how, like, you could channel the Force into something that's not a weapon.
Do you think maybe, like, in the early days of the Jedi, it was very Force dependent, but then they kind of steered more towards the lightsaber? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I do. And I think that would be, like, a really, really cool thing to explore, like, the early Jedi days, or just, like, the early, like...
Totally.
Early explorers of the Force, and I would also really maybe in the 4th trilogy or the 5th trilogy or something
the negative
like
one
that.
Trilogy,
right? Like, or just see how else the Force could be directed outside of a lightsaber.
This weapon is your life. It kind of ties back into the quote that we were discussing earlier about Anakin explaining, you know, compassion is allowed, but, you know, attachment is forbidden. While it does seem kind of problematic, I think that it's very, it's almost used as like kind of like a therapy for the Jedi, I think, where they have to like constantly like fight their inner battles, not being able to talk to anybody or, you know, share life with anybody or anything. So they kind of have to hold on to some kind of object, to carry some kind of object with them wherever they go. So I think because it's like not necessarily, I don't think the weapon side of it has anything to do with it really symbolically. I think it's more just the idea that it's something that's always on them, so they have to so they use that as like a symbol for like their,
it's like their totem.
Yeah, it's very like a totem, I think, or like it's definitely a cultural object.
Yeah.
It's less of like a take on their guns.
And you don't have to use a
weapons.
lightsaber just for fighting, like you know, Qui-Gon uses it to open the door or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like self-defense, but it's
That's
also...
how I interpret it.
Yeah, they deflect like the laser bolts a lot, so it's like it can be self-defense. They don't really have to use it to kill anybody or chop anybody's head off.
But it's their life, but it's also their death. Whenever we see a Jedi die, it's usually by a lightsaber. So it's like by bringing that lightsaber into the world, they also bring into the world like someone who'll use it against them.
Well, you can't have life without death.
Yes, you can.
And I think with that, we're going to close out. We look forward to seeing you guys next week and talking about the Clone Wars television show now. Please, for next week, because the Clone Wars was released out of chronological order, for next week we will be watching the Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 16, Cat and Mouse, the Clone Wars Season 1, Episode 16, Hidden Enemy, and then the Clone Wars theatrical film. We look forward to talking about it, getting into it. Signing out.
Bye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Indian food.
Yeah.
Get him, Dad!
Fire!